Okay, so today I'm going to talk about something a little different. Many people out there know about the Star Wars franchise, and more importantly, how woke and crap it became. But today I'm going to talk about a comic that is a hidden gem within a wave of excellent stories that come from the Star Wars expanded universe. Before I get into it, if you want to support the channel, you could jump over to my Patreon, and it would be greatly appreciated. So, the comic that I'm talking about is called Jango Fett, Open Seasons. But before I really dive into it, I'm going to have to give you some context about the Legends continuity. So basically, before Disney took over the franchise and made it into a ball of crap, for years and years, there were stories, books, comics, TV shows, all in a universe that is now not canon. Right now we know this as Legends continuity, or the expanded universe. And there's a lot of Star Wars fans out there that don't really give a crap about it. And I don't mean to seem like a narcissist or something, but the expanded universe, the prequels, and every single thing got to do with Star Wars, I've adored since I was really young. Expanded universe is something that barely gets the credit that it does deserve. It's in the name, expanded universe. Basically, under George Lucas's watch, all of these books and comics were made to all tie together and create an even bigger universe than we saw in the movies. And if you're one of those retards out there who really doesn't like the prequels and lies to themselves every day saying that the prequels were crap, there was too much romance, there was too much CGI, sorry to break it to you, you're not a real fan of Star Wars. These are the same people who love the Clone Wars TV show, yet say that Attack of the Clones is like the worst Star Wars movie because it portrays an emotional, compelling story that has some romance elements. That's the whole part of Star Wars. It's the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker. And also, as a little side note, not many people watching will probably care, but Attack of the Clones is probably my personal favourite because of the film noir influence. The story literally plays out like a detective, Obi-Wan Kenobi, solving a mystery. And it was in Attack of the Clones where we got the excellent introduction of the father of Boba Fett, Jango Fett. Now, Boba Fett has always been a beloved character. From his first appearance, it's impossible not to like Boba Fett because the dude is just a badass. But after reading some books and comics in the expanded universe, Jango Fett is the superior character. And I can make a full video talking about every Star Wars movie and EU books and comics, but today I'm just going to focus on the character of Jango Fett and what I believe is the Bible for the lore of Jango Fett and the Mandalorians. So Jango Fett Open Seasons is a 4-issue miniseries, and really it's the only standalone piece of media for Jango Fett, well, other than the excellent PS2 video game. And the story isn't 100% perfect. It's a bit short and it could have done with another issue. The writing can feel simplistic at times and the art can sometimes be a bit cartoony. But for the most part, this comic is a 10 out of 10 from start to finish. That should be adapted into a TV show or movie. And it would be 10 million times better than the woke fest, which was The Mandalorian. Which once again, I could do a whole other video on, about how we actually had a cool show, a spaghetti western with a Clint Eastwood, John Wayne style hero in The Mandalorian, working as a bounty hunter, a mercenary, going into saloons. And then after the very first episode, we get introduced to some little cute baby Yoda and he takes over the entire franchise. If Baby Yoda wasn't in The Mandalorian, it would be 10 million times better. But even saying that, Din Djarin, Pedro Pascal, the retard, his character, was basically just a rip-off of Boba and Jango Fett. Not to mention that the entire Clone Wars TV show and The Mandalorian go against the entire lore of Star Wars and The Mandalorians. The Mandalorians basically have a full book series in Republic Commando and this comic that you could be taking from. Instead, Dave Filoni went against exactly what George Lucas intended and created his own gay little universe with Ahsoka. Yeah, some story arcs in the Clone Wars was good, but for the most part, it just sucked. And the ending was absolutely terrible. Focus less on feminist Ahsoka and more on Jango Fett and the history of the Clone Wars. But anyways, that rant aside, this story transforms Jango Fett from some one-off villain who got killed in Attack of the Clones into an outright legend. After reading this story for the first time, it's impossible to not be infatuated with the history of the Mandalorians and Jango Fett. How the Mandalorians have been treated over the years in Star Wars lore is a complete disservice to what they could be, and this comic shows that in full potential, where there's two groups of Mandalorians that split off from each other and start a civil war. You have the genocidal group of Mandalorians named the Death Watch, led by the great villain of the story, Tor Vizsla, that Jango spends his entire life trying to get revenge on because he killed Jango's family. This is something that Dave Filoni tried to bring into into the Clone Wars with his Death Watch storyline, but failed horribly. Then you have the other sect of Mandalorians named the True Mandalorians, led by this absolute legend called Jaster Meril. There's no argument here that this guy is just an absolute badass, donning black and red Mandalorian armor, commanding this army in the middle of a civil war. This guy Jaster Meril finds a young Jango Fett who is broken up after his entire family was just killed in front of him, and Jaster raises him up in the ranks of the Mandalorians. And as we go on, Jango becomes a leader of the Mandalorians. And all throughout the story we have these epic scenes of war that are just truly astonishing and add so much to the character and the world, yet have never been shown on screen by anyone. In a mercenary mission gone wrong, the Mandalorians are ambushed, and Tor Vizsla comes back from the dead to kill Jaster Meril. And with a betrayal within the ranks of the Mandalorians, what's left is Jango Fett holding the corpse of his mentor, basically his father. And this is when I knew the story was truly going to be amazing. Jango adopts Jaster Meril's armor, and a fun fact, that armor he's worn his entire life. So in Attack of the Clones, he's not just some random Mandalorian, he's wearing the armor of his father, his mentor, and Jango has to make sure that that legacy lives on. Another great small detail in the story is when Jango Fett was in the Mandalorian army, he wore the same colors that Boba Fett now wears. And that's the core of the Mandalorians. They operate through honor and chivalry and brotherhood. And this is something that once again Dave Filoni just missed and ruined in his Clone Wars TV show and in the Mandalorian TV show, just making up all these stupid rules like, no, we don't take off our masks and we don't do this, and now there's female Mandalorians. Go screw yourself and stop avoiding the comics that are better than everything you've ever wrote. Now, I'm not going to spoil everything else that happens in the story, because I do believe that you should read this, but Jango Fett, donning Jaster Meril's armor, goes on a quest for vengeance, and he ends up taking on armies of Jedi with his bare hands and going through hell to get revenge. And by the time the story is finished, it's already added so much to the character of Jango Fett and the lore of Star Wars. This is everything awesome about the Star Wars expanded universe, where you can read a comic or a book that expands on the universe, and not in a way that feels cheap or like they're just tying into the movie. It was the Legends continuity and the expanded universe that made Star Wars what it was. Star Wars isn't just 6 movies, being the original and the prequels. It's all of the amazing video games and the badass John Ostrander Republic comic books, and the Timothy Zahn trilogy of books, which is the proper sequel to the original trilogy. Trust me, if you're a fan of Star Wars in any way, dive into the world of the expanded universe and you will not regret it. And I believe Jango Fett Open Seasons is just a great comic, even if you're not into Star Wars, so if you haven't, give that a read as well. And never forget, this is real Star Wars. It's not the Mandalorian and Grogu. It's not whatever the hell the sequel trilogy is, which I might get to in another video. It's the original movies and the prequels and the books, the comics and the video games that created a sci-fi universe that was barely matched by almost anything else other than, I don't know, Star Trek or Farscape. Star Wars is not people of color flipping around being gay. Star Wars is people fighting massive epic scale wars for vengeance and brotherhood and honor. Taking inspiration from classic sci-fi, old war movies and samurai movies. Luke Skywalker, a lone samurai searching for revenge in a world that was like something out of Heavy Metal magazine. Star Wars has always been this. So if you haven't already, trust me, take a look into the real world of Star Wars. If you made sense of anything I said, and if you're one of the few legends out there who knows about the expanded universe, do let me know. And if you got a problem, go complain to your boyfriend.